Greetings, gentlemen, and welcome to Mediaahh fortune telling. Wait, you don't normally use dice for that, do you? Who wants to go first? Well, myself, of course. Today I'm gonna go through Mission 4 Meltdown using all factions and with a strong focus on aerial combat. Let's proceed. I don't think I have to explain the overall mission structure again, so that saves me some time. But like always, it starts with getting a somewhat useful base up and running. Just with the small change that I start with both landlocked factory types instead of only one, for obvious reasons. They can both build engineers, albeit with a bit longer downtime on the air factory. Since this one is the defense-oriented mission, I did my best to avoid building any turrets. But there were some complications along the way. This is attempt, I don't know, 6 or 7 I think. And right out of the gate I was fed up with stuff getting claimed by enemy engineers the second I look away. So I built some T1 point defenses back there. And then the bigger issue. I tried my best to quickly get some T1 interceptors up in the air while covering my stuff with mobile shields. The interceptors to do the actual work, the shields to buy time. But that only really works against the T1 bomber rates and then only barely at times. And since that took basically all my resources, the commanders had to do the ground defense for the time being. But then came the T2 gunship raids. I tried, I really did, but I'm just not good enough to get a suitable defense up in time for that. So I had to, temporarily, resort to some T1 AA guns. Why those? Railguns. Very accurate, me like. I mean, cost and performance wise, these go a long way to protect the place. But all that gave me the time I needed to really ramp up production of interceptors and air superiority fighters to cover my airspace, and gunships to cover approaching ground units in a thin layer of rocketry. And then after, a lot more of that. Obviously going for complete overkill again, like always. Speaking of overkill, I could have tried to get Seraphim Tech to blanket the entire map in Avasa droppings, but I decided against it early on since that would kinda defeat the point of this, I think. Whatever that point might be. And then, well, I don't think I have to explain what hundreds of broadswords, so T3 gunships, will do to a place. And I also don't think I've ever before had that first inrush of enemies evaporate like they did this time. Something to remember for the future. Sure, I've also lost a few here and there, but they were rebuilt rather quickly. On that note, I also mixed in some T2 units for reasons unknown. And interesting things happen with the Cyber construction drones if the units get built too fast. With each additional one, they keep drifting away further and further. Which was even more pronounced in one of the earlier runs where they actually left the operation area. And this laser show disco madness also does things to the frame rate. Game does not approve. For the final stretch of the mission, I went with my usual approach of clearing out the entire map instead of waiting out the timer. I mean, I have the tools and that is as far as my strategy went. The only other thing I'm gonna say is that this run was actually quite reasonable with the number of gunships. On my first attempt, where I used a lot of turrets because I brain farted since I rarely use air units and therefore forgot that they can also do air defense, I ended up running into the unit cap having well over 500 of these airborne rocket dispensers. Overall, this worked well, just with a rather stressful start. But success, so see you next time, bye!